Welcome to the Daily Technology Pulse podcast by Daily Computers, your expert technology partners for public and private sector organizations throughout Maryland and Virginia. This episode is brought to you by AVID products, amplifying your future through reliable and quality audio. From educational assessment to telemedicine to listening to podcasts, our product solutions are designed with the lifelong learner in mind. And now your host, Rick from Daily.
Joining us today on the Technology Pulse, we have Justin Kahle. He's the Director of Sales K-12 for AVID products. Justin, thanks for joining us today.
Rick, happy to be here. Great to talk with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just so everybody knows, we're both on our AVID headsets today. The last time I recorded a podcast with AVID, it was... it was almost like this divine intervention sort of came down. My audio was absolutely horrible. And it's because I wasn't using a headset. I was using my normal podcast microphone, but for some reason, my audio sounded just awful and distorted. We ended up having to clean it up. And meanwhile, my guest from AVID was on his AVID headset. He sounded crystal clear. So I said, you know what? This time around, I'm not taking any chances. I'm here on my AVID headset.
Well, I'm going to say, Rick, you do look great wearing that headset, so I appreciate you having that on. And I will say, you're wearing one of the ones designed for, elementary school and really middle school, but works really well. And that microphone sounds great. You're clear as day.
Thank you. Well, I will say the elementary and middle school is kind of my mental age most of the time, so I think I'm fitting in very well with that. So, just thing I want to do is I always like to give my guests an opportunity to introduce themselves a little bit. So let us know, how long you've been with AVID and give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Funny enough, I was a collegiate soccer coach before this journey that I'm on in the really ed tech space. And I started at AVID 6 years ago. So in August 2018, and came in as a, sales associate and really just was fortunate enough to be given an opportunity to run with it. And by run with it, I mean, hey, learn the products, learn the product line, learn what's going on, talk about feature benefits, really understand, how each product can influence the student's experience, but then, develop a lot of relationships along the way. And I think in that journey, met a lot of great people at AVID, also with, many of our partners around the country, and have been fortunate to travel to trade shows and that kind of thing. But it's been, a real genesis, even within AVID. We were largely a product company. And by product company, I mean, we only spoke about feature benefit of the product. And since, really 4 years ago, we had a new CEO come in, and he changed how we discussed and talked about AVID and really audio in the classroom. We became an for impact company. How does audio impact the student? How does audio impact classroom performance? And then in turn, what do our headphones and headsets, what roles do they play in that environment? And kind of going through that process for me, it's really been a learning journey, and it's been exciting for me along the way. And that really brings me to here, with you. We started working with DALY closely pretty recently, but it's gone really, really well. And we're excited about, what we've done so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are as well. It's the partnership with AVID has been fantastic. We've heard so many great things about your products, which is why I wanted to bring AVID back onto the podcast. The last time we were talking about just the whole, experience about how important audio is. We sort of broadened that out. And today I kind of wanted to go a little more in depth, because one of the things that I know very well from my own personal experience, and then from my experience with my kids, is how important that the audio is to the learning experience. But what a lot of people don't realize is that really can start at a younger age, because a lot of people think, okay, so headsets, we're looking at early, middle school, or even the high school age. But the benefits of audio in the learning environment really can start much younger than that, correct?
Yes. And, more and more, as I think the importance of multi-sensory stimulation and that kind of thing in the classroom has come out tremendously, like post-COVID, but even before then it was starting. But I think post-COVID, even further with the learning loss we're trying to combat and that kind of thing. But I do think, and the studies would support that multiple ways of input are going to help promote greater learning and greater retention from students of any age, but particularly in early learners where you can be really most influential. And I'm talking 3-year-olds till 9-year-olds, like that age group. We were talking pre-K, kindergarten into elementary school. And just like a little side story, I have a daughter, she's 7 years old, and I have a 6-year-old too, but I have 3 daughters. But the 7 and 6-year-old, they're in school now, and they go into class, they have their circle time, that kind of thing. They have 15, 20 minutes just to kind of get out whatever was happening in the morning. The teacher says, okay, time for it's a mindfulness minute is what they call it, but they go to their desk. They do have a Chromebook. They hop on there, they're plugged in with their headset, they throw their headphones on, and it's just a relaxing, soothing minute of, I think it's some music that they play through there, but it really just tunes them in to whatever they're going to learn and go after that day. And that's just kind of a little personal anecdotal story for me, but across the country, and I travel all over for what I do, there's more and more stories that align with that.
And it's really interesting because people don't often think of it in the terms of the audio loss, even when you're sitting in front of a Chromebook or you're sitting in front of a MacBook or you're sitting in front of an iPad and you have that and you're listening to something, because there's a lot of things that you really do miss if you don't have that personalized audio experience. And so I'm going to take it way back to the day back when I was in the classroom, and again, the teacher would break out the the old record player with the one built-in speaker, or finally, eventually, we got to the point where they would roll that big 30-inch TV in on the cart and play whatever. But again, you're talking about one speaker at the front of a classroom trying to reach around the entire classroom. How much detail do you miss? And so you think about that today, and you don't realize just what you're missing is really impacting the learning experience. Because my son was in middle school last year. He's still in middle school, but when he was in middle school last year, they finally had them start bringing headphones into the classroom. And he said the one time they were doing something about learning about indigenous people in another country. So they were listening to this video. They were watching this video and listening to this video. And he said, where you could hear the sound of the river and how the people were talking to each other in this different dialect. He said they had watched the same video 2 weeks prior, where it was just at the front of the classroom, just your standard projector projecting it on the wall with the one little speaker in there. And he goes, I couldn't believe there was so much that we missed. He goes, you could hear, animals in the background, you could hear birds. He said, and it was just that much richer of an experience. So think about that with practically everything.
Right. Yes. I think to that point with your son, that type of audio experience really boosts the overall engagement of his experience in it, right? Because you have maybe, I don't know, a lot of times with audio that's projected out at you, it's very difficult to really feel the 3D sound maybe, or the directional sound around it. So a headphone or a headset in that space can really drive you through, whatever that experience that, that might be. And in the science world, which you were, alluding to just then, I think the water is something that when you hear it in like a real sense, like, okay, that's really peaceful, that kind of thing can calm you down. There are many studies, people live by the ocean, they have generally a calmer demeanor because of that sound and that visual experience, that together. It's not just one thing or the other. But I think to your point, when you jump into an early learner classroom, right, and you have the ability to really engage on a personalized level, which the name of the game is personalized learning now, any type of, but maybe neurofeedback, let's call it, that you can create with virtual stimuli is going to help develop them at an even greater rate and, hopefully keep them interested in a greater rate, which I think is so difficult now given the immediacy of everything. So, with the audio, with the visual stimuli, really, really helps the student.
And it really does help when you're talking about building those new pathways.
Mm.
There was a program years ago where it was listening to music with students who had, different learning challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And what it would do is it would highlight certain parts of the music. It would turn down bass and turn up treble, or certain sounds, or certain beats within the music. And I remember it from, reading up on it, where it was all about helping to build new pathways in the brain. So you think of new ways of thinking of things. And again, adding this richer audio experience to a student, like you said, even pre-K, 3 years old,
Right.
Having that where it almost immerses them into this learning experience, you have to think that that's providing all kinds of benefits down the road.
Yes. I would agree to your point about the training and focus. There's something called binaural beats. And what that is you have two different frequencies. One is generally played in each ear. Now that's not going to be possible without, a headphone or headset or an earbud. That works. But what that does, those frequencies can create a balanced frequency within your brain for whatever maybe you're looking for in that moment. So if you're looking for focus, if you're looking for relaxation, if you're looking for excitement, like those kind of things can be built into the learning environment at a very young age. And really what it does, it just helps them learn to focus, helps them learn to relax, even when that might not be exactly what they want to do, but it's what needs to be done in that moment. And it's a great, valuable skill that can be learned, very early in the learning journey.
Thinking, of course, about the younger learners.
Sure.
And when you really do think about putting headsets into their hands and on their ears, parent in me immediately goes to protection, because I can remember the very first time my older son, who's now 15, put on a set of headphones. He took that volume knob and cranked it all the way up to the top, and I was convinced he was never going to hear it ever again. And thankfully we didn't do any damage. But you have to start thinking about, how do you protect those ears, because those little ears are precious, right?
Right. No, absolutely. So to that point, our headphones specifically for those age groups, pre-K to middle school and to high school, even the one you're wearing now, or I believe it's AVID that's 95 decibels is the max volume there. All right. The one for really pre-K into elementary school is called our Wonder Ears product, is 85 decibels max volume. Now that's designed for safer listening over an extended period of time, right? If you wanted to blast your ears out for 8 hours, it still would, influence you in a certain way. But over a general couple hours where you're sitting there listening, the max volume is 85 decibels. It's a safer experience for your student, which is hugely important for, developing ears that we don't want to influence later down the road in a negative way. And I think, a second piece of all of that is you want, a microphone, if necessary. Let's say you're in a language learning lab, or you're doing a podcast like this, and maybe you have a voiceover on coding design you're working on, which I've seen in a bunch of STEM labs, even at young ages, as young as 4 or 5 years old. You want a microphone that's just going to record your voice with 20 other students around you being auditory in that environment. So we design products that are going to make sure, one, the student's safe, and they're going to function in the best way possible, so that the teacher really doesn't have to worry about the functionality, and she can worry about whatever software assessment or curriculum she is working with in the classroom.
No, and I think that's great. And I have to say how incredibly forward-looking to do that, because when it comes to reducing the volume without reducing the quality, because that's usually what you end up having to trade off. You end up going with a lower volume, but then that lessens the quality, versus turning up the volume higher and then reducing the damage. So you've really managed to balance that.
Yeah, and I think to that point, that could also be said about the microphones that we have on our headphones and headsets now. Their vocal range has certain frequencies to it. You could look at some products out there on the market now where the microphones don't pick up certain frequencies as well as others. And I'm talking, let's say, maybe female higher pitched voices, or even, let's say, a young student who has a higher pitched voice. It's their voice at the time, and it's not picked up as well because of the technology in the microphone. We have looked at as far as, hey, this is the vocal range. This is what needs to happen in our microphone for us to be successful and for the student to have, the most equitable opportunity, for success. And that's really what we're looking for, right? So it's that, and it's accessibility, of our products. And I think that's why we continue to really push the envelope with what we develop, and then how we listen to the feedback from teachers, other just partners we're working with, and what's necessary for student success.
And you also have to think about the students that are soft-spoken.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Or the students who are not native English speakers.
Right.
Because they're always going to have that hesitancy, or they're going to have, dare I say, an accent, as we like to say in the English vernacular. But they're going to have certain vocal characteristics that, not everything is on a level playing field. And the fact that you have technology that's able to help bridge that gap, because sometimes that gap can be significant, is incredible. So you talk about the feedback that you get from teachers in the classroom. Can you share some of that? Can you share maybe a little anecdotal?
Just quickly, about your point, and then I'll, get a story in there. But when you are coming from an environment of where maybe English isn't your first language, and maybe you're trying to speak 3 languages, and that's a whole challenge in itself. There's enough anxiety and uncertainty about that coming to the classroom, having to understand, what this English lesson is all about. I think when you put a headset on, gets you focused in your environment, and then you have a safe listening volume, plus you have a microphone that's going to understand your voice, and then you have a personalized learning experience in front of you that is going to help you. One, it keeps you in your own environment. No one else is worried about you. You are locked in, and you're ready to go. And I think you can perform your best and really grow and learn to the student really you're made to be. Where in the past, I think some of those students might have, fallen off or been deterred and that kind of thing. So I really feel a phone or a headset enhances that experience more than we really like to give it credit for. But anyway, to the stories, I travel a lot of trade shows around the country. So California, Texas, Ohio, Florida, North Carolina, you name it. I've probably been there in the last few years, and, different environments, but always a lot of the same stories. One that's very pertinent or, in my brain now is I'm at TCA in Texas. And in Texas, we actually designed a product for Texas testing a few years ago that we still have now. And it does really well. But we have a teacher come up to us. She starts, telling a story. She goes, 2 years ago, I had to run this test called the Telepass test in Texas. And I had all my students taking it. We had generic headphones that we bought from wherever, and they all take it. The feedback we get on the testing was just garbled, all sorts of stuff. And it turns out that an air conditioner had turned on in the classroom during it. And during that time, and they didn't really notice it because it wasn't really that loud in terms of the entire classroom, but it influenced all of that testing where they had to retake the whole thing. They couldn't accept any of it. So the second year, they ended up buying our AE55, which is a different product, but they bought that product and used it in the classroom. And the same thing happened. The air conditioner turned on again. She was like, I can't even make this up because I don't even control it. But it turned on during the test and, recorded the students' voices perfectly, even with, that going on, the noise in the background. And when you hear stories like that from around the country, you can really see that teachers have a lot to worry about, right? And the biggest thing they're worried about is the student success in the classroom. And the little piece we can do is, hey, when stuff goes on that's loud and around you, it's not going to influence what you're doing in that moment. And that's just, one of many stories. And I think probably the biggest compliment we can get is we have a lot of big districts around the country that are continue to, come to us and ask for, our products and give us feedback and want to work together to build the, best solution for their students.
I think that's fantastic. And the one thing that we talked about before, and I think it bears mentioning again.
Sure.
You get these procurement folks and you get the folks who make the decisions that have what I like to call the Amazon syndrome. And let's go to Amazon.com because Mr. Bezos doesn't have enough money, and
Hey, it's quick and easy, that's for sure.
and we're gonna find the cheapest headphones that we could possibly get if we're going to provide headsets, because we know that these things are going to be destroyed in a week. So, we might as well not spend a lot of money on them. But with Avid, we have learned that your products are built very well. They're not destroyed in a week. It's not to say that they're indestructible, but they're not destroyed. And, they don't go into the backpack the first time and come out in more pieces than they came in. And the quality on them, as we had said, as you can hear with the microphones, the quality is phenomenal. The audio quality is phenomenal. The technology of being able to limit the decibels is fantastic. But the price point that you bring into the equation, you're not talking about purchasing the high-end executive Fortune 50 headsets for students. You're giving them the quality of those devices at a price point that will meet the budget of any school system.
Yeah, so the product I'm wearing right now, it's called the AE75. I actually use this at trade shows. We have a listening station where people come up and they'll listen to, let's say, Journey or Queen, something like that, maybe a gaming setup. And I always ask, hey, like, what do you think? Like, if you went into Best Buy, you went to a store, what would you pay for this? And generally they'll say $200, $250. I'm like, I wish I could take that money like right then. Yeah. Like, yeah, absolutely. That'd be great. But no, like, it's a, $28.95 product that, is just designed with a great speaker, great magnet, and great microphone. And we wanted to do that because our goal, and this is our most expensive product for the record, our goal is to really make a high quality product that is accessible, for students all over the country. And accessibility in that sense means fits the budget of school districts around the country, which we know continue to get tighter and tighter. And so, part of that is we streamline our manufacturing processes and we make sure we continue to keep our end nice and tight so we can, support classrooms and give students the most really equitable opportunity for success. And I think I said that already in this podcast, but that's really the most important part of what we do. And, we have the product and price points to support that.
Well, it's about equity, but it's, again, also about building those pathways, because it's building the pathways in the students. It's building the learning habits, hopefully with the students, but it's also building the pathways with the instructors. Because if I'm a teacher and I know that I have this technology available to me, I'm going to utilize it more. It's going to be more beneficial to my classroom. It's going to be more beneficial to my students. It's going to be more beneficial to my school system because, again, I'm going to be able to do things with this type of audio learning technology that I've not been able to do before because, again, it's getting lost in translation.
Yes, I think that comes down to, we have an amazing team here who at AVID, right, who continues to progress and has the vision to want to support that audio experience and making it as simple as possible, really, for the teachers to be successful and really, in turn, the students to be successful at whatever they're doing. And that's really supporting their entire learning journey from pre-K into high school and beyond. And, we have some higher ed and gaming products now that we're really excited about, and with the same messaging and the same energy behind it. I can't emphasize enough how important, the audio side of learning is. There's really 4 different types of learners out there, right? You get the visual, auditory, kinesthetic, or reading, writing learner, right? I think we forget a lot of the time about the audio piece of that. And the more really you can have in terms of, let's say you have while you're reading, and let's say there's a vocal input to that as well, your retention rate skyrockets. I'm saying up to 60% better than just reading alone. And that depends, obviously, on what kind of learner you might be, but we might not be doing, a test when you're 3 years old to see what kind of learner you are. So we want to make sure we have, all bases covered so you can have, as a student, have the best experience.
Right. To that point, again, I go back to that immersive learning experience because, again, you're sitting there and you're having a child read, and every child reads at a different pace.
Right.
But being able to help them in the beginning, where again, I particularly look at, if you're trying to learn a different language, whether it's you're trying to learn English because you're a non-native English speaker, or you're trying to learn a foreign language for a foreign language class, imagine sitting there and reading, but hearing everything pronounced and hearing everything pronounced clearly so that it follows along with what it is that you're reading. It's going to enhance that learning experience as you're sitting there and you're reading and maybe looking at pictures of, nature, to hear the waterfall, to hear the birds, to hear the animals. You're creating that immersive experience, which again is going to enhance the learning function.
Think about, have you ever messed around with any of those VR headsets at all? Like a
Yes.
Meta or any of those? Okay. So
Yes.
you put one of those on, right? A lot of those headsets, they have a 3.5 millimeter jack, right? You can use earbuds with it. You could use a headphone with it. I recommend an AVID headphone if you're going to use them. It works great. But you go in there, you can go to Italy. And if you're learning Italian, you just show up in Italy and you're rolling around through the Vatican and things like that while you learn. And that kind of immersive experience is on a whole different level. And I think that audio piece just enhances that even more.
That's the thing. I think too many people discount the audio too much. You don't realize just how that crystal clear audio and having that student being able to have that individual learning experience, you just don't realize just how powerful that is. Now, the one thing I will say is that everybody says seeing is believing. Well, it's a little tough when it comes to audio pieces, but you talk about, being at the trade shows and having people be able to put on the headphones. What about the people that, well, speaking of trade shows, let me back up a little bit.
Sure.
Are we going to see you at our event?
Oh, absolutely.
In
Absolutely.
Richmond and Annapolis?
Yes, we'll be down
All
there.
right.
Very excited.
So we have an opportunity for folks to come to our Daily Technology Showcase and be able to hear this. But for those who can't, is there a way for them to be able to experience this for themselves?
And no, absolutely. So you can reach out to me directly or any of our team if you're looking to test out a product. We love getting samples out into the market. We think the best way to understand the influence and impact of a headset in the classroom is to have one, have your hands on it so you can feel it, touch it, see the durability, but then also use it with whatever Chromebook, iPad, PC, desktop, gaming device, whatever it might be that you're using, and see how, one, it's a plug and play functionality, so it'll work right away, and then two, how your students enjoy the experience.
And all you have to do to get that ball rolling is to contact your daily rep, and we will make sure that we get the folks from AVID to get you the equipment that you're going to need to have in order to understand just how positive these audio learning experiences can be. Justin, anything else that we forgot to cover in this episode? Because I think we've covered a lot of ground. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything.
Yeah, no, I think we've, covered a lot. I think, if you think of audio at a early learning level, you're talking about stress management, you're talking about meditation and mindfulness, you're talking about focus, you're talking about a lot of the same things you continue to talk about throughout your life. And so I think the sooner you can start and see the impact of audio there, the better long term. So just really excited to have this opportunity to talk to you, Rick. So thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. And I really look forward to seeing you at the showcase events in October.
Yeah, me too. Can't wait.
Terrific. Justin, thanks so much for joining us today. It has been a great pleasure talking to you and having you on the Technology Pulse.
All right. Thanks, Rick.
And that wraps up another insightful episode of the Daily Technology Pulse podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Before we sign off, we want to take a moment to remind you of some important legal considerations. The views and opinions expressed by guests on the Daily Technology Pulse podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Daily Computers or its partners. The content provided in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of Daily Computers Inc. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can find us at www.daly.com. The Daily Technology Pulse podcast will be back with more exciting discussions on the latest in technology. Until next time, stay curious and stay connected.